You wake up and realize you no longer recognize the life you're living. The career, the routines, the relationships, the ambitions they used to define you. They gave you a sense of direction, a clear reflection of who you were supposed to be. But now, they feel like clothes that no longer fit a voice you no longer believe. It's not that something dramatic happened. Sometimes it is. A divorce, a job loss, a betrayal, a diagnosis, or the quiet death of a dream. But often identity collapse doesn't arrive like a storm. It arrives like a soft unraveling. The things that used to matter just don't. You stare at the work you once chased, and it feels hollow. You return to the spaces you once felt powerful in, and you feel like a stranger. People ask, "What's wrong?" You don't have the words, because how do you explain that you are mourning something invisible, the death of a version of yourself? This is not weakness. This is not laziness. This is not failure. This is a moment of psychological initiation. Carl Jung called it the confrontation between the ego and the self. Most people live their entire lives inside a structure of identity, built by survival, what our parents rewarded, what our culture valued, what our peers admired. But identity is not self. Identity is the mask we wear to be accepted. Self is what remains when the mask dissolves. When you experience identity collapse, the natural instinct is to panic, to run back to the old self, to reconstruct the old scaffolding, to grab at what once defined you. But there is a different path, a deeper one that Jung would say leads not to more achievement, but to individuation, the process of becoming whole. This path begins with surrender, not giving up, but giving in. A soft surrender to the unknown. You don't know who you are right now. That's not a problem. That's an opening. The first step is allowing the not knowing. Most people skip this part. They rush to reinvent, to rebrand, to rebuild. But purpose that's born from panic will only tether you to another false identity. You must let yourself be emptied before something real can emerge. Sit with the questions, not the answers. Who was I trying to be, and for whom? What was I chasing, and why? Which parts of me were performances, and which parts were true? Write them down. Sit with them. Return to them again and again. These are not questions to answer quickly. These are invitations into the deeper self. As you sit with the silence, something will begin to stir. Not a new version of your old identity, but a whisper of something raw, ancient, and yours. You may remember things you used to love before they were monetized. You may feel grief for the parts of you that were never allowed to fully live. You may notice anger, not rage at the world, but the sacred anger that comes from realizing how long you abandoned yourself in the name of becoming acceptable. Let that grief come. Let that anger speak. They are not enemies. They are guides. There's a strange silence that comes after the collapse, a hollow moment where everything you once clung to, your roles, your titles, your routines, has either fallen away or stopped making sense. You look in the mirror and you don't recognize the person staring back. It's not depression. It's not failure. It's something deeper. A subtle, terrifying question. If I'm no longer who I used to be, who am I now? This moment is more common than we admit. It can come after a breakup, a job loss, a spiritual awakening, burnout, illness, or even success that feels meaningless. You did everything right. You followed the script. And still, you're here, floating in the in-between. This is what Carl Jung called the rupture between the identity and the self. Identity is who you've been told to be. Self is who you actually are, and often you don't meet your real self until the old identity dies. This isn't a video about how to bounce back. It's a journey inward into the dark, fertile space where transformation happens. In this video, we'll explore why identity collapse is not failure, but initiation, how to navigate the psychological in-between with Jungian insight, how to let go of your roles without losing yourself, and finally, how to rebuild your sense of purpose, not from performance, but from alignment. This is about writing a new story, not based on who you were told to be, but based on who you're finally ready to become. This is where the reconstruction begins, not from ambition, but from alignment. Jung believed that the self includes both shadow and light, the parts you celebrate and the parts you suppress. Real purpose is not born from perfect clarity. It's born from integration. Start with the body. Reconnect with your intuition. What feels heavy? What feels alive? Don't look for purpose in the mind alone. Your nervous system has wisdom. Your gut remembers truth. Rebuild your rituals, not routines that numb you, but rituals that root you. Wake up and ask, what part of me needs to speak today? What part of me needs to rest? Create not to impress, but to express. Let art movement sound silence, be a bridge between the old self and the new. And most of all, write. Write the story you were never allowed to tell. The story of how you became who you were. The story of the masks you wore. The story of the moment they cracked. The story of what you lost and what you're now beginning to reclaim. Use prompts like, what was I taught to value as a child? When did I first feel the need to become someone else? What am I most afraid people will see if I stop performing? What truth have I always known, but been too scared to say out loud? As you write, you will find your voice again. Not the voice that wins approval, the voice that speaks from the bones. This is the voice of the self. It doesn't need to convince. It doesn't seek applause. It simply tells the truth. As you hear that voice, patterns will begin to break. You will say no to things you used to tolerate. You will leave places where your soul no longer fits. You will grieve deeply, and in that grief, you will grow roots. The self does not emerge fully formed. It's excavated slowly in moments of quiet courage, a conversation where you say what you really mean, a decision made from integrity, not image, a pause in the middle of a day where you remember, I don't have to perform to belong. And then one day, you will notice a strange feeling, not motivation, not excitement, something more sacred, a sense of alignment, of forward motion that doesn't come from fear, of choosing not because you must, but because you may. That's purpose, not a job description, not a mission statement, not a role. Purpose is a way of being. It's the resonance between who you are and what you bring into the world. When you lose your identity, you are not broken. You are beginning again. You are no longer carrying the weight of who you were supposed to be. You are walking toward who you already are. Rebuilding purpose after identity collapse is not about reinvention. It's about remembrance. Remembering the self you buried, the voice you silenced, the dreams you postponed until they hardened into duty. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. You're not late. You're not lost. You're in the sacred pause between stories. Don't rush it. Don't bypass it. Be with it. Let the old self grieve. Let the new self rise. If you need a place to begin, start here. Take a deep breath. Close your eyes. Say out loud, I don't know who I am anymore. And that's okay. Because the truth is finding me piece by piece. Then pick up a pen and write. Your new story doesn't start with answers. It starts with your willingness to ask the real questions. And in those questions, your purpose will begin to breathe again.